If you were walking down this street in Amstetten, Austria, you'd see a quiet, suburban neighborhood that looks like any other in Middle Europe. Living at 40 Ybbstrasse was Josef Fritzl. To his neighbors, he was a well-respected electrical engineer who went about his daily routine without drawing any suspicion. His household appeared to be a model of domestic stability. He lived there with his wife, Rosemary, and they spent their days raising 3 young grandchildren they had taken in. The chilling reality of this case lies in that mimicry, the ability to shop at the same stores and greet the same neighbors while maintaining a horrific secret just a few feet beneath the floorboards. That facade fractured early in April morning in 2008. A medical emergency forced Fritzl to call an ambulance for his 19-year-old granddaughter, Kirsten. At the hospital, the medical team was baffled. The young woman was dangerously ill and looked like a ghost. Tests showed a severe vitamin D deficiency, a physical marker of someone who had never been exposed to natural sunlight. To save Kirsten's life, doctors needed her biological mother's history. This routine medical requirement forced Josef into a corner his cover story couldn't account for. Under mounting pressure from the hospital and police, he eventually brought forward a mysterious 42-year-old woman named Elizabeth. Elizabeth's appearance and the subsequent confession she gave to investigators would shatter the town's reality, turning a normal family home into one of the world's most notorious crime scenes. Beneath the house, Fritzl had engineered a dungeon accessible only by navigating a labyrinth of 8 locked doors. It was a windowless, unventilated environment where the ceilings were barely 6 feet high. The lack of airflow meant the humidity stayed trapped inside. In 1984, Fritzl locked his 18-year-old daughter Elizabeth in this space. She would not see the outside world again for 24 years. Over more than 2 decades, Elizabeth was held in this cellar, where she gave birth to 7 of Fritzl's children. 1 infant died shortly after birth and was incinerated by Fritzl in the house's furnace. Despite the cruelty of her environment, Elizabeth fought to maintain her children's humanity. She convinced Fritzl to bring her books and paper, teaching the children reading and mathematics in the dark. On the ground floor, Fritzl maintained the lie that Elizabeth ran away to join a cult, even forging letters to convince his family and the authorities. He moved 3 of the cellar children upstairs over several years. He told his wife they had been abandoned on their doorstep with notes from Elizabeth, gaslighting her into accepting them as their own. He managed the dungeon's survival through cold logistics, stockpiling enough bread and milk so that the prisoners could survive for 3 weeks without him. This system allowed Fritzl to live a double life of absolute freedom. While his daughter and children were trapped in a cellar, he took international holidays and visited sex districts in Thailand. This division of worlds relied on the total psychological suppression of his wife, Rosemary, who had been conditioned to never question the sounds coming from the basement or the babies appearing on her porch. This timeline plots the gap between the initial construction of the dungeon in 1978 and Elizabeth's disappearance in 1984. It shows that Fritzl began building his underground empire 6 years before he ever took his daughter captive. Forensic psychologists describe his profile as one of corrupted lust and an obsessive need for absolute possessive control. For Fritzl, his own flesh and blood were not people, but objects to be owned, managed, and hidden away for his own use. But the one variable Fritzl couldn't control was biological reality. When Kirsten's health failed, his rigid system of secrecy began to collapse. Down in the cellar, Elizabeth threatened Fritzl with murder charges if he allowed Kirsten to die. For the first time in 24 years, she had leverage. In a rushed attempt to hide his crimes, Fritzl brought Elizabeth and the remaining children upstairs. He told the family and neighbors that their long-lost daughter had suddenly decided to come home. This final desperate lie failed. Once she was away from the house and speaking to the police, Elizabeth revealed the truth of the last 2 decades. At 73, Josef Fritzl was removed from society, facing the rest of his days locked away in a prison or psychiatric ward, still deluded about the nature of his crimes. The surviving family members faced a different kind of confinement. Their trauma was so profound that they were moved to a secure psychiatric hospital under heavy guard to protect their privacy and health. Now, the children who grew up in a cellar are discovering the world for the first time. They are experiencing the simple things they were denied for years, like the feeling of rain on their skin or the warmth of the sun.